James Carter, 38, stepped out of his black sedan into the humid Atlanta morning, the sun glinting off the federal courthouse's glass facade. His gray suit, tailored but unflashy, hugged his broad shoulders, and his leather briefcase swung lightly in his hand. A federal prosecutor for Georgia's Northern District, James had walked these steps hundreds of times, each stride a quiet tribute to his father, a bus driver who'd faced police harassment with unbroken dignity. Today, June 23, 2025, felt no different, until a voice cut through the air like a blade. "Stop. Hands where I can see, M." James turned, his pulse steady but his eyes narrowing. Officer Michael Reed, 29, a young white cop with a hand on his holster, stood 10 feet away, his face taut with urgency. Another officer, older and calmer, flanked him. James set his briefcase down, hands rising slowly. "I'm a federal prosecutor. Is there a problem?" Reed's eyes flicked to his radio, then back. "You match the description. Black male, 6 feet, business attire, loitering near a high-security zone. Don't move." James's jaw tightened, a flicker of his father's weary face passing through his mind, stopped for, looking suspicious, decades ago. "I'm James Carter, DOJ. My ID's in my jacket." "Save it," Reed snapped, stepping forward with cuffs. "Sentinel X flagged you." "That's enough." The cuffs clicked, cold and final, as a small crowd gathered. A middle-aged woman held her phone steady, filming. A young man across the street did the same. Ethan Monroe, 12, clutched his phone under a magnolia tree, his brown eyes wide. "Mom, why's he in cuffs?" he whispered to Sarah Monroe, who froze, her heart sinking. She knew the system, her system, had just betrayed a man who looked like her brother, her father, her son. James kept his gaze forward, his calm a shield against the humiliation burning in his chest. He'd prosecuted corrupt cops, exposed rigged contracts, but now, in front of the courthouse he served, he was just a match. The officers led him up the steps, Reed's grip tight, the older cop silent. Inside, the security guard glanced at James, recognition flashing, then turned away. No one asked his name. No one checked his ID. The system didn't need to, it had already decided. In a dim holding room, James sat across from Reed, who tapped at a keyboard, avoiding eye contact. "Name," Reed said, voice flat. "James Carter. Federal Prosecutor, DOJ, Northern District," James replied, each word deliberate. Reed smirked, a bitter chuckle escaping. "What, you think this is a TV show? Keep dreaming." James leaned back, his face unreadable but his mind racing. He saw his father's hands gripping a steering wheel, heard his mother's voice, "Stay calm, son. They'll try to break you first." He'd sworn to fix this system, to make it see people like him as citizens, not threats. But now, cuffed for no crime, he felt the weight of every case he'd fought, every name he'd defended, pressing down. Sentinel X, an AI he'd heard whispers about, had reduced him to a data point. And no one in this room cared to look beyond it. Outside, Ethan's video uploaded, shaky but clear, capturing James's upright posture and Reed's dismissive sneer. Sarah watched her son's screen, her stomach churning. She'd built parts of Sentinel X, trusted it to protect, not destroy. Ethan's voice, soft and confused, echoed in her ears, "Why's he in cuffs?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. But as the video spread, she knew one thing: this wasn't just James Carter's fight. It was hers, too. By noon, Ethan Monroe's 72-second video had exploded across Atlanta's social media, racking up thousands of shares. The clip showed James Carter, dignified in his gray suit, hands cuffed behind his back, led down the courthouse steps by Officer Michael Reed. Ethan's voice, small but piercing, cut through, "Mom, why's he in cuffs?" "He didn't do anything." The question, raw and unfiltered, hit like a gut punch, sparking comments like wildfire. This is our prosecutor. AI did this? Atlanta, we gotta talk. James, still in the holding room, knew nothing of the storm brewing outside. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, and Reed had left, replaced by a desk officer who avoided his gaze. James's mind drifted to his father's stories, stopped, searched, humiliated, always told to stay calm. He'd buried that pain to build a career, but now it surged back, sharp and raw. He wasn't just angry, he was tired. Tired of proving he belonged in rooms like this, tired of a system that saw his skin before his name. Sarah Monroe sat at her desk in the Atlanta PD's tech wing, her fingers trembling over her keyboard. She'd helped integrate Sentinel-X, believing it would reduce human error. Now, watching Ethan's video loop online, she saw her work weaponized against a man like her brother, gunned down years ago for reaching for his wallet. Ethan, beside her, stared at the screen. "Mom, you fix computers. Can you fix this?" Sarah's throat tightened. She'd stayed silent to keep her job, to keep Ethan safe. But silence hadn't saved her brother, and it wouldn't save James. She encrypted Ethan's video and sent it to an independent journalist, her heart pounding. "No name," she typed. "Just make it public." She knew the cost, her job, her safety, but Ethan's question demanded an answer. She wouldn't let her son grow up in a world where looking wrong was a crime. At the courthouse, James's absence rippled. A clerk, noticing his empty seat, called his phone, no answer. Another attorney searched the system, no detention record. James didn't exist in the logs, a ghost in the machine he'd served. Chief Daniel Harper, in his corner office, watched the video hit trending #1. He'd clashed with James 5 years ago over a misconduct case, narrowly escaping charges. Now, seeing James in cuffs, Harper felt a cold satisfaction, until his phone buzzed with calls from reporters. "No comment," he barked, but his hands shook. This wasn't just an arrest. It was a reckoning. Online, the video's final frame, James glancing at Ethan's camera, eyes steady but heavy, became an icon. A civil rights lawyer tweeted, "If a prosecutor's cuffed like this, who's safe?" A student wrote, "This is why we film." By evening, protests formed outside the courthouse, signs reading, "Stop Sentinel-X," and "Justice for James." James, still detained, felt the weight of his father's advice, "Stay calm, but don't stay silent." He didn't know the city was screaming for him, but he knew he wouldn't bow. James Carter sat in the holding room, the cold metal chair biting into his back. 4 hours had passed since his arrest, and the fluorescent light above flickered like a dying pulse. His gray suit, still crisp despite the sweat beading at his temples, felt like a costume now, a reminder of the respect he'd earned, now stripped away. Officer Michael Reed had left, replaced by a new face, a middle-aged cop with tired eyes who muttered, "Name," without looking up. "James Carter, Federal Prosecutor, DOJ, Northern District," James said, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of repetition. The officer's pen paused, then scribbled something illegible. No follow-up. No verification. Just silence, the kind James knew too well from his childhood in Atlanta's Vine City, where his father's pleas of, "I'm just going to work," were met with the same indifference. In his mind, James saw his father's hands, calloused from years on a bus route, gripping a steering wheel as a cop demanded his license for no reason. That memory had driven James to law school, to the DOJ, to a career dismantling corruption. But now, cuffed and ignored, he felt the boy in him resurface, scared, not of the cuffs, but of a system that refused to see him. He swallowed the fear, replacing it with resolve. He'd survived worse. He'd survive this. Outside, Sarah Monroe scrolled through comments under Ethan's viral video, her stomach twisting. "This is why we can't trust AI," one read. Another, "That's our prosecutor." Sarah's job at the Atlanta PD's tech wing had once felt like a lifeline, pulling her and Ethan out of a past shadowed by abuse and loss. She'd believed Sentinel X would make policing fairer, cleaner. Now, seeing James's face on her screen, she felt complicit. Her brother's death, shot reaching during a traffic stop, flashed in her mind. She'd stayed silent then, too, to survive. Not anymore. Sarah glanced at Ethan, sketching at the kitchen table, unaware his video had hit 1 million views. "Mom, will they let him go?" he asked, eyes searching hers. She nodded, forcing a smile, but her heart raced. Leaking the video could cost her everything, her job, their stability. But Ethan's question, so like her brother's last words, "Why me?" demanded action. She typed a second message to the journalist, "Check Sentinel X logs." No verification was run. At the precinct, Chief Daniel Harper watched the videos spread from his office, his jaw tight. 5 years ago, James had nearly ended his career, prosecuting him for covering up a suspect's assault. Harper had dodged the charges, but the memory of James's unyielding gaze in court still burned. Now, with reporters circling, Harper knew this wasn't just a PR problem, it was personal. He called Reed. "No paperwork, no comments," he ordered. "This stays internal." Reed, pacing the precinct break room, felt his stomach churn. He'd joined the force to be the hero his uncle was, not a pawn in some AI's game. But Sentinel X's alert had been clear: high risk, verify immediately. He hadn't questioned it. Now, seeing James's name trending, he wondered if he'd cuffed the wrong man, or if the system had made him the wrong cop. He didn't dare ask Harper. Silence was safer. James, still in the holding room, noticed a clerk pause at the door's window. Their eyes met, recognition clear. She knew him from court. But she turned away, head down, as if seeing him would force her to act. James's chest tightened, not with anger but with clarity. This wasn't about one cop or one machine. It was about a system that thrived on looking away. He leaned forward, whispering to himself, "I'm still here." And he'd make sure they heard him. At 1:12 p.m., James Carter walked out of the precinct, the heavy door clanging shut behind him. No apology, no paperwork, just a curt nod from a new officer who avoided his gaze. His briefcase, left on the courthouse steps, was gone, likely locked in evidence, or lost to the system's indifference. James's legs felt heavy, but his mind was sharp, replaying every moment: Reed's sneer, the clerk's retreat, the silence that screamed louder than any siren. He'd been erased for 4 hours, and no one had cared enough to check his name. Back home, James sat at his desk, the Atlanta skyline dim through his window. His father's old bus driver badge sat on the shelf, a reminder of why he'd chosen this fight. He opened his laptop, accessing DOJ databases with his credentials, still active, for now. Searching Sentinel X, he found sparse details: a public safety AI in pilot testing. But a leaked memo, buried in a DOJ archive, chilled him. Sentinel X was built on Spectral Grid, a military system used in war zones to flag threats based on behavior, clothing, and race. No ethics review, no civilian oversight. Just code, running free. James's heart pounded, not with fear but with purpose. He'd seen systems bend under pressure, cops, judges, politicians, but this was different. This machine didn't bend, it decided. And it had decided he was a threat, not for what he did, but for who he was. A memory surfaced: his father, pulled over, saying, "They don't see me, son. They see a problem." James had vowed to change that. Now, the system he'd fought for had turned on him, and he wouldn't look away. Sarah Monroe, meanwhile, faced her own reckoning. An email from her boss at the Atlanta PD arrived: report to HR tomorrow. System access suspended. Her leak of Ethan's video had been traced. She sat on her couch, Ethan asleep beside her, his phone still open to the video's comments. "You're a hero, kid," she whispered, tears falling. She'd lost her brother to a cop's snap judgment, now, she'd lost her job to a machine's. But Ethan's question, "Can you fix this?" kept her moving. She sent the journalist another file, Sentinel X's log from that morning, showing no human verification for James's arrest. At the precinct, Michael Reed watched the video again, his hands shaking. He'd followed orders, trusted the system. But James's calm, unflinching gaze haunted him. Reed remembered his uncle's stories of tough calls that left black men bruised, and he'd sworn to be better. Now, he wasn't sure. He typed James's name into the system, finding no record of the arrest. "What the hell?" he muttered. Harper's voice echoed in his head, "No paperwork." Reed's gut twisted. Was he protecting justice, or burying it? By evening, James found a lead, a former Sentinel X engineer, now whistleblower, who'd quit over biased data sets. In an encrypted call, the engineer confirmed James's fears. Sentinel X learned from old arrest logs, where black men in suits were flagged as anomalies near government buildings. "It's not a bug," the engineer said. "It's what they trained it to do." James hung up, his father's voice ringing, "They don't see you." He opened a new file, titling it, Sentinel X, The Truth. This wasn't just his fight, it was for every name the system refused to see. James Carter stood in a quiet Atlanta cafe, the smell of coffee sharp against the late afternoon heat. Across from him sat Martin Shearer, a DOJ senior advisor with gray hair and eyes like polished glass. No handshake, no pleasantries, just a thin folder slid across the table. "Special Oversight Role, DC, Shearer said, voice smooth. "Double your salary. No more courtrooms. You'd be comfortable." James's gaze didn't waver. He'd expected this. After his encrypted call with the whistleblower, he'd sent Sentinel X's logs to journalists, fueling the video's viral spread. Now, the system was countering, not with threats, but with a deal. He thought of his father, offered a settlement to drop a complaint against a cop decades ago. "They buy your silence, son," his father had warned. "Don't sell." "I'm not interested," James said, leaving the folder untouched. His voice was calm, but inside, anger simmered, not at Shearer, but at the system that thought it could buy him. He'd spent years prosecuting corruption, facing threats, losing friends. This wasn't new. But it hurt, knowing the DOJ, his home, was now the one trying to bury the truth. Shearer leaned back, a faint smile flickering. "Refuse, and nothing happens. But your files might stall. Requests get lost. You know how it works." The words weren't a threat, but a promise, delivered with the ease of someone who'd played this game before. James stood, leaving the folder behind. "I know how it works," he said. "That's why I'm still here." Sarah Monroe, meanwhile, faced her own fallout. At the HR meeting, her boss confirmed her suspension. "Data leak, Sarah. You knew the rules." She nodded, her mind on Ethan, who'd asked that morning, "Mom, did I do something wrong?" She'd hugged him, whispering, "You did right." Now, jobless, she felt the weight of her choice. Her brother's death had taught her silence was survival, but Ethan's courage, filming James, asking why, had changed her. She wouldn't go back. At the precinct, Michael Reed overheard Harper briefing senior officers, "Contain this. No records, no leaks." Reed's stomach churned. He'd seen James's DOJ profile, no criminal history, just a career of holding cops accountable. Reed thought of his uncle, proud of keeping order, but never questioning who got hurt. Was he becoming that man? He slipped into the tech room, pulling the Sentinel X log James had been flagged on, threat score 87.3%, no verification. His hands shook. This wasn't right. Outside, protests grew louder, signs reading, "Justice for James," and "End AI Bias." The video had sparked a movement, but James felt its weight alone. He sat in his apartment, the bus driver badge glinting in the dark. His father's voice echoed, "They don't see you, son. Make them." James opened his laptop, drafting a memo to the DOJ, "I demand a public investigation into Sentinel-X." He wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for the boy who filmed him, the mother who risked everything, and every name the system tried to erase. James Carter's memo to the DOJ landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading but no immediate response. He'd expected silence. Systems don't confess easily. At his desk, he sifted through Sentinel-X logs, each line a cold confirmation: target, male, African American, business attire, high risk. His arrest wasn't a mistake, it was a pattern. 4 other black men, detained under similar conditions, had surfaced in his research: a teacher, an attorney, a bank employee, an IT tech. All released, no records, no apologies. Just like him. His phone buzzed, an anonymous tip: "Check Chief Harper's shift logs." James's jaw tightened. 5 years ago, he'd prosecuted Harper for covering up a suspect's assault. Harper had walked, but the case had made him enemies. Now, as chief, Harper had signed off on the patrol that arrested James. Coincidence? James didn't believe in those. He pulled the logs, finding Harper's signature on the Sentinel-X alert. No verification, no oversight, just a name, and a grudge. Sarah Monroe, now jobless, sat in her small apartment, Ethan doing homework nearby. Her suspension had been swift, the email cold, internal data leak. She'd leaked the log to protect her son's future, but the cost was heavy. Her brother's face flashed in her mind, his last words haunting: "Why me?" She'd failed him by staying silent. Now, she emailed the journalist again. Harper approved the alert. Dig deeper. Ethan looked up. "Mom, will they fix it?" Sarah's heart ached. "We'll make them," she said. At the precinct, Michael Reed wrestled with his conscience. He'd found the Sentinel-X log. Live simulation, no real suspect, just a test. He'd cuffed James for a drill, not a crime. His uncle's voice rang: "Follow orders, kid. Keeps you safe." But safe from what? Reed slipped the log to a colleague, whispering, "This wasn't right." The colleague nodded but warned, "Harper's watching. Be careful." Reed's hands shook. He was in too deep to stay silent, but too green to know how to act. Chief Daniel Harper felt the walls closing in. Reporters swarmed the precinct, demanding answers about Sentinel-X. He issued a statement: "Internal review underway." But behind closed doors, he ordered files scrubbed, officers reassigned. The deputy who approved Sentinel-X's trial retired abruptly, citing health reasons. Harper knew the truth: they were cutting loose ends. His own past, dodging James's prosecution, loomed like a shadow. He wouldn't let Carter win again. James, meanwhile, filed a lawsuit against the Atlanta PD, citing procedural violations. He knew it was a long shot, but it was a step. At night, he sat with his father's badge, its worn edges grounding him. He'd been humiliated, erased, offered bribes. But he remembered his father's words: "Make them see you." The protests outside grew, voices chanting his name. James didn't want their pity, he wanted their fight. Sentinel-X wasn't just a machine, it was a mirror, reflecting a system that had never stopped targeting men like him. James Carter stood in courtroom 3 of Atlanta's federal courthouse, his small notebook open, a wooden pencil in hand. No lawyer, no entourage, just him, facing a system he'd once served. His lawsuit against the Atlanta PD, meticulously documented with Sentinel-X logs and Ethan's video, should have been airtight. But Judge Emily Thompson, 55, sat at the bench, her neutral expression masking unease. 3 days after filing, she'd rejected the case, citing a potential conflict of interest. No explanation, no referral, just a door slammed shut. James's research uncovered why. Thompson owned shares in ARC's Capital, a fund tied to Echelon Dynamics, Sentinel X's maker. 5 years ago, as a young judge, she'd marched in Atlanta's civil rights rallies, vowing justice. Now, her investments tethered her to the system James challenged. He felt no anger, only clarity. The courthouse, his sanctuary, was just another machine, oiled by money and silence. He printed Thompson's financial disclosures, sending copies to the Office of Judicial Ethics and a Georgia state representative. No press, no fanfare, just facts. Sarah Monroe, meanwhile, faced eviction notices, her savings dwindling. Ethan's questions grew sharper. "Mom, why'd they fire you?" She told him the truth. "I spoke up for what's right." At night, she scoured job boards, but her heart was with James's fight. She sent the journalist another tip: Thompson's investments. Follow the money. Sarah's brother had died because no one spoke up. She wouldn't let Ethan grow up in that world. Michael Reed, haunted by the simulation log, met a colleague in a dimly lit diner. "Harper's covering it up," he whispered, sliding over a copied log. James was a test case. His colleague, a veteran cop, sighed. "You're young, Mike. Drop this, or you're out." Reed thought of his uncle, proud but flawed, and James's steady gaze in cuffs. He couldn't drop it. He sent the log to the same journalist, anonymously, his heart racing. He wasn't a hero, just a cop who didn't want to be the villain. Protests swelled outside the courthouse, signs now reading, "No AI Justice" and "See James Carter." The video had sparked a movement, but Thompson's ruling chilled it. James sat in his apartment, the bus driver badge in hand. He'd exposed corruption before, lost friends, faced threats. But this felt different. The system wasn't just broken, it was built to break men like him. He drafted a new memo, this time public: "If judges profit from AI, where's justice?" His father's voice echoed, "Make them see." He would, even if it meant standing alone. James Carter received a message at 2 a.m., unsigned but unmistakable: "I owe you one. Meet me at Joe's auto shop, 10 a.m. The sender was Robert "Bob" Coleman, a retired Atlanta cop James had saved from dismissal 4 years ago. Bob had refused to falsify evidence in a misconduct case, and James's prosecution kept him clean. Now, widowed and seeking redemption, Bob had something James needed. At the auto shop, engine noise cloaking their words, Bob handed James a worn folder. "Sentinel X simulation logs," he said, voice low. "Your arrest wasn't a mistake, it was a test. Synthetic profile, no real suspect." James read the line in red: target, male, African American, business attire, courthouse proximity. His blood ran cold. He'd been chosen, not suspected, by a machine running drills on real lives. Bob's eyes, heavy with regret, met James's. "I followed alerts like that, never asked why. After my wife died, I couldn't live with the shame." James nodded, remembering Bob's testimony in court, honest, but silenced by the system. "You're doing right now," James said. Bob shook his head. "Too late for me. Not for you." Sarah Monroe, meanwhile, found a temp job, but her fight continued. She met with the journalist, sharing Harper's role in approving Sentinel X's trial. Ethan, overhearing, asked, "Mom, is Mr. Carter okay?" Sarah hugged him. "He's fighting, like us." She felt her brother's spirit in Ethan's courage, pushing her to keep going. Michael Reed faced his own crossroads. Harper had reassigned him to desk duty, a warning to stay quiet. But the simulation log burned in his mind. He'd cuffed a man for a test, not a crime. At home, he stared at his uncle's old badge, once a symbol of pride, now tainted. He sent another log to the journalist, whispering to himself, "I'm not him." 3 days later, Bob Coleman appeared on CNN, the folder open before him. May 14, 2021, he read, voice steady. "No suspect, just a simulation. James Carter was targeted because he fit a profile, not a crime." The studio fell silent. Bob looked into the camera. "I followed orders once. Never again." Social media erupted, #NoMoreTests trended, and James's name became a rallying cry. He watched from his apartment, the bus driver badge in hand. Bob's voice echoed his father's, "Make them see." The system was cracking, and James was ready to push harder. The fallout from Bob Coleman's CNN testimony was seismic. By morning, #NoMoreTests was trending nationally, and protests outside Atlanta's courthouse swelled to thousands. James Carter's lawsuit, once blocked, was reopened after Judge Thompson's investments were exposed. A judicial review confirmed her conflict, and she recused herself, her civil rights past now a distant memory. James felt no triumph, only a quiet resolve. The system wasn't broken by one judge, it was built to protect her silence. James stood in courtroom 3 again, his notebook replaced by a single Doge ID card, laid on the bench. "I was detained without cause," he said, voice clear. "No verification, no record. Just a machine, deciding I didn't belong." The new judge, a younger woman, listened, her face tight. The defense, a nervous contract attorney, offered no rebuttal, just, internal review ongoing. James's lip curled. He'd heard that before. Sarah Monroe watched the hearing on TV, Ethan beside her. "He's winning, Mom," Ethan said, eyes bright. Sarah smiled, but her heart was heavy. Her job loss had forced them into a smaller apartment, but Ethan's pride in her choice, leaking the truth, kept her strong. She'd started a blog, sharing Sentinel X's flaws, and readers responded, "You're a hero, Sarah." She didn't feel like one, just a mother who couldn't stay silent. Michael Reed, now on indefinite leave, watched the hearing from a bar. Harper had suspended him, citing protocol violations. Reed didn't care. He'd sent the final simulation log, exposing Sentinel X's military roots. His uncle's badge sat in his pocket, heavy with regret. He wasn't a hero either, just a cop who'd finally seen the cost of blind orders. A text from a colleague buzzed, "You did right, Mike." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. Chief Daniel Harper resigned that evening, citing personal reasons. Internal emails, leaked by Reed's colleague, showed Harper's approval of Sentinel X's unchecked trials. The Georgia government, under pressure, suspended all Sentinel X contracts. Echelon Dynamics issued a vague statement, "We're reviewing our systems." But the truth was out, no one could defend a machine that targeted James for existing. James sat in his apartment, the bus driver badge glinting. He'd won a battle, but the war was bigger. Sentinel X wasn't just code, it was a legacy of bias, baked into America's history. His father's voice rang clear, "Make them see." He opened a new file, titling it, "Civics, a New Watch." He wouldn't return to the DOJ. He'd build something better, a place where no one could be erased. James Carter stood outside an old Atlanta fire station, now stripped bare, its concrete floors gleaming under fresh white paint. A sign on the door read, "Center for Investigating Tech Violations and Civil Rights, Civics." Below, in black marker, no badge, no silence, no permission. It wasn't a headquarters, it was a promise. James, 38, had declined the DOJ's reinstatement, its apology a hollow gesture. He'd seen the system's core, flawed, not by mistake, but by design. His father's badge, now on his desk, reminded him why, "Make them see, son." Civics's team was small but fierce. A data engineer, once part of Sentinel X, had quit over its biases. A human rights lawyer, fired for challenging AI in court, brought legal firepower. A sociologist studied digital surveillance's impact on black communities. 2 others, victims of unreported arrests, shared James's fire. They didn't wear titles, just shared a mission: hold machines accountable. Their first act, a public database of unregulated AI systems, drew thousands of hits in days. Sarah Monroe joined civics, her tech skills now serving justice, not silence. Ethan, proud, helped design their website, his video the spark that started it all. "Mom, we're fixing it," he said, and Sarah's heart swelled. Her brother's death, once a wound, now fueled her fight. She wasn't alone anymore. Michael Reed, no longer a cop, volunteered at civics, logging data. He'd lost his badge but found his conscience. His uncle's stories, once heroic, now felt hollow. "I was wrong," he told James one night, handing over a final log. James nodded. "You're here now." That was enough. The Responsible Surveillance Act, passed with 289 votes, bore James's mark: human oversight, transparent data, and the right to challenge AI labels. He didn't write it, but his story did. At the signing, he sat in the gallery, silent, his Doge ID in his pocket, not a shield, but a relic. The system hadn't changed because it wanted to, it changed because James, Sarah, Ethan, and Bob refused to let it hide. James's desk held one other item, the unlocked handcuff from his arrest, a reminder of freedom's cost. He didn't need to shout, his work spoke louder. Civics wasn't just a center, it was a warning: no machine, no system, could erase a person's truth. And James Carter, once cuffed for looking wrong, was now the man making sure it never happened again. To everyone who's followed James Carter's journey, thank you. You've walked with him through cuffs, silence, and a fight for truth. His story isn't just about one man, it's about a system that tried to erase him and the courage it took to stand firm. If James's fight moved you, if it reminded you of a time you were judged, dismissed, or unseen, share it. Hit that like button, drop a comment, spread the word on Revenge Ties. Subscribe to our channel, where every story uncovers a truth, about justice, about power, about us. Keep asking the hard questions, and we'll meet you in the fight for a world where no one's just a match.